And I think there's another point to look at is who you're speaking to. You might not want to be speaking to your customers. It might be an internal thing. So Facebook might be right if you want to set maybe a closed Facebook group for your company because you find that's the best way to engage your thousands or hundreds or even smaller network of employees. It could be based abroad as well. I don't know how it's going to work. Or even there's a service called NIN which allows you to create your own social network and just kind of ignore Facebook and just say that I'm going to be playing that field. And that might be right for you. So I agree with Monica and most people here. There's a good chance that social media can be used for pretty much every business. It's just find out what you want to use it for and just not immediately going for the most obvious reason or most obvious answer.
It's a subject quite close to my heart. I wrote quite an impression blog post having watched TV one night and seen Cupinol would stay and Jersey Royal potatoes in the same outbreak, both advertising Facebook groups. And I was like, why the hell would I like wood stain on Facebook? Seriously, or Jersey Royal potatoes. And so I wrote a big blurb about it on the blog, and I was just kind of like, I just don't get it. I don't get why everybody suddenly, on every kind of TV campaign, is facebook.com/Cupinol or Jersey Royal potatoes. And I will leave my words a little bit on the Cupinol example. They've got a really good actually Facebook group now, but it really for me comes back to that subject of like gating. So it's all about that engaged user with social. It's not just that one-off campaign that comes back to the start of it. So Cupinol are doing a lot of competitions. They're asking people to put pictures of their sheds up. It's not that interesting. How many people are going to engage in it? But if you think you're going to win something through a like gating exercise or like me before you can engage with me, you're actually closing off your business. And I think that some of these big consumer brands do need to think quite carefully about that. You know, what actual kind of engagement you're getting from having a Facebook group about sheds or potatoes? What's the story that you're going to tell? You know, in potatoes, or really don't give a shit, to be quite honest. So that's just my take on it.
Can I? No, I agree with that. Cupinol, I mean, that we can't kick around on our internal email going like, you know, what the hell are they doing? But Cupinol's Facebook group is genius, I think, and it takes their brand into something that is very true about the consumers. It stops just being a product on the shelf and has relevance to what they're actually doing. But I think, you know, working on Ribena, and we're kind of year 3 of being social on Facebook. Facebook is just part of an integrated strategy. So, you know, you talk about like gating. Well, you know, we don't gate people, and I think that's really, really important to see that. I think that, as I was saying at the beginning, I think I totally agree with what all you guys are saying, and I think that when you're looking at B2B in terms of social media, I mean, the relevance of Facebook might be a lot less than the relevance of Twitter. If you're looking at big brand campaigns, the emphasis may be way more in Facebook. But we still have the challenge all the time of what do we do with 260,000 people that have said, we like Ribena, what does it actually mean? Some of the insights that we're getting from this year is it's a fantastic way of recruiting people into CRM, traditional CRM. So it's, you know, by far our most successful channel to recruit people into DM is social media. Driving any kind of participation, any kind of sampling or experiential, Facebook is the main driver for doing that. So in the case of Ribena, it's just become a really good comms channel. And I think the challenge with a lot of brands is then persuading them to take the next step and become more social. So how do you take these advocates, these people that love your brand? The Marmite example is really interesting because Marmite have really rocked in social media, and that's just because they're saying to people, I like Marmite. I like potatoes, what can you do with that? And I think that, you know, that is a real challenge for consumer marketing on Facebook. And I know it's different to the B2B world, but I think it's very interesting. And I think the key point is, we can sit here and say that we're experts in all of this. I think the other thing is that consumers are changing, and their expectations about how they engage with brands and organisations is changing all the time. So if you'd gone out and interviewed people 6 months ago and said, what do you want from the brand on Facebook, you'd get a very different answer to you would now, because they're having their minds open to what they can get out of a brand on Facebook.
Just dip their toes in the water. No. You're all doing that. Are there any brands, businesses in the room who do not want to use social media? So presumably all the businesses in the room are using social media. Okay, the next question I thought might be quite interesting for a panel full of agency, predominantly agency people. I don't know who sent this in, but the question is, who's best placed to run social media campaigns? in-house or agency? Let's ask some of the agency people.
A bit of both. It depends on the size of the team, depends on the demands of your day-to-day business. We work with some clients where, as the guys were saying, we set up guidelines, tools, ways of working, help clients get it right, train people, and then they get on with it. And we might provide some content, make a video. Some clients we provide the whole service. So it just depends. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that. I think ideally you should do it yourself as a business because you should be close to your customers. But as a good agency, you're part of a client's business and you're equally close to customers, so that's the way it should work. So I don't think there's that problem, right?
I think it's a really interesting question because I used to believe you had to do it yourself. And I set up my social media training business to teach people to do it themselves. And they'd even come on all the course and then I go, actually Liz, can your guys do it for us? So by that time we knew their businesses and got under the skin of the business so we could help them. Because we've been doing online communities for about 20 years now, there's a whole series of academic papers about going back 20 years around online community management. And one of the rules of thumb is really, that's been proved time and time again, is 80% of questions or 80% of interactions in an online forum or any kind of online community can be answered by any intelligent moderator. Only 20% of it you'd have to actually refer to a subject matter expert. Yeah? So a lot of my job, we do two things. We do signposting, so people will tweet or Facebook about the products of our clients or their services, and we can answer those because it's just a question of stringing the right link from their webpage, pointing them to it, making an introduction, etc., etc. About 20%, and it does hold true, we have to ring the client and say, okay, what are we going to do with this? So I've forgotten the question.
Who's best to run it?
Who's best to run it? Yeah. So I think a combination is a good idea. You have to work in partnership. You can't hire an agency and then hope for them to do it for you. Look how old Crystal was in Welcome to Yorkshire, and you still hired a social media consultant, and you're on this panel. So I think it shows partnerships was a good idea.
I completely agree with what Paul and Liz said there, but I think in terms of the agency question about does an agency need to be involved, my biggest reason for why an agency needs to be involved is that we're in a completely fast-moving, technologically driven communications medium now. So you look at things like the Facebook Edge algorithm, which is, having read a lot about it recently, very, very complicated. You need to know all about how that algorithm works. Now, I'm not doing down anybody that's client-side, I've been that side myself, but it's not necessarily the day-to-day runnings of a digital marketing department, something that I would have had the time or the inclination to go out and find out about. And I think that's really key to what an agency can add value to, is that kind of constant, robust upskilling, constantly learning about the new things that are coming out, so that it's looking at that expert advice that somebody can give you in such a fast-changing environment. And don't forget, anybody who isn't a social media agency hasn't been doing this as a, there's no professional accreditations, particularly in social media, that anybody really buys into. So I think it's in that partnership spirit really as we all sort of evolve in this communications medium.
Yeah, I think I'll agree with Christoph. I was reading something the other day, and it said in America, in the US, community managers earn $92,000 a year, which is quite interesting. And that's I thought, blimey, I'm going to move to America. But I back up what Paul is said. That I think that if you have, the most day-to-day stuff should be done by the company themselves, I think. And then agencies are good to pull in for some sort of campaign-led stuff and good ideas, and maybe they can help inject some ongoing stuff in every sort of quarter to bring some new life to the pages or to the channels, and just to come up with new ideas and new techniques that we've used on other clients. Because a lot of it isn't about reinventing the wheel; it's about what's worked there will probably work over here as well. So why don't we try that for this client and adjusting the strategy. So yeah, I think a team approach is the best. But honestly, if you can't afford an agency, then yeah, obviously do it in-house and just upskill yourself.
I think as well there are no end of social media management tools out there where you can work as a team in-house and agency pretty seamlessly as well. So it'd be really fun to use those.